Lake Saif-ul-Malook. The love story between the prince and the fairy was written by mystic poet Mian Muhammad Bakhsh in poetry form and is a well-known folklore in Pakistan. Our tale is a retelling of this folklore, but the essence of the story remains the same. So sit with me under the moonlight and listen to this tale of love. I can't sleep, Harris told the psychiatrist with tears in his eyes and his head hanging low, fingers fidgeting in his lap. Can you tell me why? She spoke softly, trying not to pressurize him. It had taken him days to open up to his psychiatrist. He thought that he would seem insane to the lady. Harris was the son of a great glass merchant of Pakistan. He had everything from the day he was born. Living the life of the billionaire's son, he never knew of hardships until one day when he dreamt of Badr. Sitting beside a lake in all her glory, with her skin glowing bright like the moon, hair of the colour of the darkest abyss known to man, and eyes golden, blazing like a fire. Her pearly teeth shone when she laughed, and her head fell back, showing her milky neck that would make any man fall on his knees. She was the beauty of heaven sitting beside a majestic emerald lake, surrounded by snowy mountains, bathing under the moon, putting it to shame due to her beauty. Harris became restless from the day he dreamt of such beauty. He had fallen in love with someone so unapproachable. He talked to his father about the girl that robbed him of his peace. He called for a psychiatrist to cure his sleeplessness and sadness. His psychiatrist deemed them harmless hallucinations, but Harris knew it was far more than just that. His father had tried his best to support his son. Harris started traveling among countries trying to find Badr, but he could not find the place he had dreamt her. He was cut off from the world and started to live in the fantasy world of his dreams. He traveled to the farthest corners of the world, but nothing was of any use. Years passed, but his yearning for the mysterious woman did not fade for once. He loved her deeply and desired her with all he had. He went back to Pakistan to start from the beginning, exploring the north of the country deeply. One day, he camped in the Kagan Valley. He took some necessities and started his trek like usual, exploring different mountains. He knew he would find her above a mountain in his dreams. He walked further and further till he reached a great mountain near the outskirts of the valley in a secluded area. No paths or routes were around the giant rock, giving the expression that no one had discovered it before. A spark of hope ignited in his soul and he tried to climb it. He tried but failed every time. It was too steep to climb without gear. He was devastated and tired. He sat under a tree nearby and shed tears in frustration. As he cried, someone tapped his shoulder. He looked up to see an old man smiling pleasantly at him. He stood up and greeted him. It seemed like the old man already knew him. The man shuffled through his bag and took out a rough, soiled cap. "Put this on, and you will get to where your heart desires the most." Harris took it, confused, and put it on. It was Solomon's cap. Suddenly, the ground beneath him started to tremble with flashes of sceneries flowing near his eyes. The world went dark, and a deafening sound echoed in his ears. In a matter of seconds, he was standing near the beautiful lake of his dreams. He cried in joy and thanked God repeatedly. He started to run towards the lake, frantically looking around, trying to find his beauty, but she was nowhere. The night was silent. The lake was still mirroring the exotic snowy mountains surrounding it, with no soul in sight. He knew this was it, but was indeed missing something. Suddenly, a guy appeared in front of him, scaring him. "Who are you here for?" "Badr." It was all Harris could say, all he knew. "Do you even know her origin?" The guy spoke after a pause. "She is the queen of fairies, made of fire, invisible to human eyes. I won't ask you how you came here, but let me tell you, you won't be able to see her." "Why?" Harris cried out desperately. She comes here every 14 days on the child wind of the moon. Only the humans that perform Chila, 40 days praying without food, are able to see fire creatures. Harris knew that it was nearly impossible for him to complete the sacred act, but the suffering without Badr was far more painful. I will. I can wait, Harris spoke determinedly. With that, the unknown guy disappeared, and Harris went by the lake near a big rock. He prayed desperately day and night till he lost count of the days. His body grew weaker and his face thinned, but the hope in his heart kept him alive. One day, when he thought that it was his last time, he looked up to the sky as a tear escaped his eyes and addressed his God with such intense emotions that it moved the heavens. I don't have any regrets, he spoke, even if I die here. Just then, he saw the light coming from the side and heard the flutter of wings. The angel of death has arrived, he thought. But as the light came closer and closer, he saw her. Just like in his dream, a beautiful goddess with a beauty that would blind a human eye approached the lake. Her gigantic wings fluttered behind her, carrying her ethereal form in a warm embrace. She landed near the water, and her golden eyes shone brighter at the beautiful view the lake provided. Her face looked so innocent, gleaming with happiness at the freedom she found near the lake. Her form added to the calmness of the scene. She laughed and skipped freely, without any worries. She removed her wings and clothes and descended in the water with her ebony hair sprawled around her. Her face and body shone under the bright light of the moon, giving it an indescribably haunting look. Harris felt a deep sting of emotions in his heart that made him cry. All those years of yearning for her finally came to an end. All his weakness vanished, and he stood up from his place, making his way towards her, his queen. Just then, she finished her bath and came out of the lake. Harris was awestruck by her beauty. She looked up at him, and her eyes filled with moisture. I had a dream. I saw you here, just like this, and I have been searching for you for many years, he whispered. He felt such a bond with her that he did not need to explain anything except for his strong feelings. Badr smiled and took his hands in hers. You weren't the only one. Her melodic voice resonated in his ears, filling his heart with love so unexplainable. He embraced her. She was his Badr. He kissed her forehead and moved back and looked deeply into her. Suddenly something flashed in her eyes. Fear. She retraced from his warm embrace and looked around, trying to spot her wings. I need to go. He will kill us, she cried. What are you talking about, my love? Who will hurt you? Harris was confused. My captor. He is a jinn. I must return to the Kaf mountain. Please let me go. I love you, but we cannot be together. Tears were streaming down her lovely face as she explained her misery. Harris closed the distance between them and hugged her shaking form. I won't let you go, my love. Not now, not ever. I have waited too long to be with you. I will protect you, I promise. Badr calmed down in her lover's arms. Let's run away, Harris said. He covered her body with his cloak and they both ran away towards the Kagan Valley and hid near a graveyard for the night. Meanwhile, Jin Safed, who was in his castle thousands of miles away, was in a rage. His prized possession, Badr, the beauty of all fairies, had not returned to him. The walls of the castle shook under his thundering voice. The glass windows shattered, and every species within the castle and nearby trembled in fear. Jin Safed was a frightful creature, a giant like a mountain, and white all over like snow. The earth shuddered beneath his steps as he walked in all his fearful glory. He was a monster, selfish and robust. He had fallen in love with Badr when he saw her many years ago. He kidnapped her from Paristan, the kingdom of fairies, and brought her to his palace on Kokaf, a vast stone fortress protected by strong mages and fearsome beasts. Even the king could not rescue his daughter from the powerful jinn. Safed was in love and could not refuse her request of bathing freely under the moon on a deserted lake a bit far from the palace, twice a month. But now, his innocent fairy was missing and he was distraught. He went to the lake and roared her name again and again. Badr! 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 But it was no use. She had flown from his cage and was lost to him. In an extreme fury of rage and sorrow, he stomped his giant feet on the lake, causing turbulence in the water and shaking the mountains off their bases. He was ruined. He wailed to the skies with his heart sorrowful. He wept all the way, his massive heavy tears trailing down the mountains, forming a stream of water, accumulating in the Kagan Valley, forming the Ansu Lake, also known as Teardrop. He was no more at the lake or the Kagan Valley. He was transported to his final resting place, the Osai, the land of giants. His giant form fell. His massive body was crumbled by unhappiness until there was nothing left but a mound of earth, and eventually nothing at all, for the earth consumed him. On the other side, Harris took his queen Badr to his house. His father was ecstatic to see his son back to life with the girl he loved. They were united, but their story did not end here. They both lived happily for a while. Harris inherited his father's business and soon became preoccupied with the fast pace of the world, while Badr stayed at home mostly. No one knew that she was a fairy, as it would cause a significant problem for her. She folded her wings and kept them in the corner of her cupboard. She knew she would not be able to use them. "Can I go and swim in the lake?" she asked Harris, her eyes twinkling with the hope of a positive response. "No, my love. It is dangerous, and the jinn might find you and take you away from me. And who knows if you won't fly back to your world if given the opportunity." He meant that as a joke, but Badr did not quite find it amusing. "You can swim in the swimming pool if you like. I'll order the men to leave." But Badr was a free fairy who lived in the mountains and bathed in the lakes. Adjusting to human life was very difficult for her, but still, she tried the best for her love. They did love each other more than anything, but all the sacrifices were made by Badr. Harris did not know that she was hurting. He was high on love and happiness, and ignored the little details that strengthened a relationship. He bought her jewels of every kind, clothes any woman would wish for, and the luxuries any man would die for. But he forgot that she was not a human. She wanted something else. The life of a billionaire's wife did not suit Badr, and the ignorance of Harris was creeping into her heart. Her beauty faded, and her skin got pale. Her hair lost its shine, and her eyes looked dull. One night, when Harris went on a business trip, she mustered up the courage to take out her wings. Everyone was asleep. The mythical-looking creatures fluttered in their glory, emitting a magical gleam. They had been living on their own and trapped in the dark cupboard for way too long. They were a part of Badr, and she forgot that locking them meant locking herself. The reason why she felt so devastated was apparent. She was nothing without her own identity. She wrote a letter to her husband and flew to her land, her kingdom, where she rightfully belonged. When Harris came back, he looked for his wife everywhere, but could not find her. He felt like someone had ripped his heart out of his chest. He cried and fell on his knees, wailing on the loss of his love. Suddenly, he saw a letter on his nightstand. He stood up and reached for his wife's last words. "Dear husband, I love you very deeply, but over time I realize that I cannot live the life of captivity again. I am nothing without my identity, and you took that from me. You cannot own me. I am going back to where I came from, my home, Paristan. If you want me back, you have to prove your love to me, and the only way to convince me is that you come to my kingdom. If you can brave the journey and seek me out of my father's castle, I'll come back to you as your partner." Harris read the letter and became very sad. He had not realized that he had been imposing himself on her that much. How suffocated she must have felt. Am I any different from Jin Safed? He owed it to himself to bring back his queen and prove his love to her. He told his father about it and left his business with him. He did not know where Paristan was, but started his journey back to where it all began, the Kagan Valley. He went near the mountain, where he met the old man and waited for him. Days passed, but he did not find the man. He was distraught. His heart was filled with terror that maybe Badr was in some danger. It was till one day he gave up and stood from his place. He went to a bazaar nearby and ordered some chai. As he was waiting for his drink, he felt eyes behind his head. He turned around and saw the same old man sitting under a tree. His eyes widened on spotting him, and he frantically made his way towards the man. The old man smiled at seeing Harris in front of him. Babaji, I want to go to Paristan. Please tell me the way. Harris held the man's hands desperately, pleading through his eyes. The old man saw the sorrowful look on his face and spoke. Paristan is called a mythical land, and it does not exist on any map. You cannot reach there in your current state, but I have something that could help you. He started rummaging through his coarse jute sack and produced a tattered cloak. He gave this to Harris and patted his shoulder. May God show you the way to that land and to your wife's heart. Harris once again started his journey after heartily thanking the old man. He went north of the valley towards the border of China, the Karakoram Highway. He reached the fairy meadows on the north of Nanga Parbat as the man instructed. He stood there in the middle of the vast green meadows, facing the snowy mountain, with not a single soul in sight. He took out the cloak from his bag and remembered the man's words. The moment you put it on, everything that was made by man will disappear, and everything unseen, like the land of fairies and supernatural creatures, will come to sight, while you will be invisible to all creatures. Harris put on the cloak, and the world around him completely changed. He saw something none could even dream of. Just like the beautiful fairy that came from this place, the land was a magical beauty. He was lost for words and gasped. He travelled towards the palace where his queen resided and entered with ease. He wandered around desperately, trying to locate Badr, but could not find her. He was passing by the hallways, all the creatures oblivious of the human roaming between them. Then he heard soft sobs coming from a room. Badr. He quickly went through the door to find a vast, indescribably beautiful room that led to a garden. He crossed the room and went towards the garden. It was such a serene and wonderful place, and there he saw his lady sitting in front of a stream, weeping. He went towards her, and she looked up alarmed. She felt his love nearby but could not see anything. Harris took off the cloak and engulfed her in his arms. They both cried tears of joy. You came, Badr repeatedly cried on his shoulder. I'm sorry, my love. Harris stroked her hair. I love you. Badr and Harris reconciled, and they stayed to live in Paristan, away from the world's evils, happily. The end. I find it a joy to read a mythical love story, regardless of how it ends, to take a break from my reality and lose myself in the imagination of a writer's world. I really enjoyed this tale, and I hope you did too. Until next time, take care.